of the Hans. Dear Judith, dear colleagues and friends of Seidel Foundation, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to you to today's online briefing on the mega election in India and its implication for Europe as part of our series Global Politics in Focus. The national parliamentary election in India, held from 19th April to 1st of June 2024, was the largest in history, with nearly 970 million voters participating. The results announced just 2 days ago on 4th of May have generated significant discussions. Most Indians voted for Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the party bloc National Democratic Alliance, NDA, led by his Bharatiya Janata Party, BJP. However, the victory fell short of expectations, and the opposition gained more seats than anticipated. In fact, the BJP secured only 240 out of 543 seats in the lower house. Thus, Modi's goal of winning 370 seats was clearly not met, and the result is also lower than the 303 seats won in 2019. Consequently, Modi will need the support of other parties in his coalition, since he does not have a majority. How can this surprising outcome be explained? Is Modi's power diminished? What are the consequences of the election results for India's future political course, its domestic and economic policy, and its ambitions to become a global power? Finally, what implications does the new political landscape hold for the future development of EU-India relations? We will discuss these questions with all of you, and in particular with our guest speaker, Judith Weinberger-Singh. Judith has been the resident representative of Seidel Foundation in India since the beginning of the year. She has lived in India for several years, working as the head of project and associate director for a European non-profit company in New Delhi. We now look forward to an animated online exchange. Judith, the floor is yours.
Good morning to Brussels and other EU countries, the European countries, and also good afternoon to Indian viewers. A very warm welcome also from my side. I'll just quickly attempt to share my slides with you, and then we can right away start. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Right, so thank you very much, Dr. Thomas Lee, for the introduction. You've already summarized the gist of this mega election, which was really exciting to witness. Also being here in India, it was a very intense period and really truly showcased the democratic fabric of India. And the Chief Election Commissioner of India, Mr. Kumar, has also phrased it or framed it as Festival of Democracy. Sorry, I just lost my presentation. Still visible? Can you still see it, Michelle?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay.
But we can see two slides at the same time.
Okay. I'll just once again share it. Apologies for the technical glitch here. So I suppose you can see the PowerPoint interface now, not
Yes.
the slide. Yeah.
Yes.
One more try. Apologies for that. So can you see the slide now? Yeah?
Yeah, very good.
Okay, great. So as I was saying, so this was truly the festival of democracy in the largest democracy globally. The key figures are once again mentioned here. So it was truly a historic dimension of scale and also a length. What is also interesting to see that the number of parties has significantly increased in the last decades. So this year, 744 parties have been part of the election with over 8,000 candidates, and around 45% or so were from the were independent candidates without any affiliation to a party. So this effort actually required 1 million polling stations and 15 million security staff all across India, and it spanned across 7 phases and 44 days. So I'm not able to move forward now. Okay, here. So once again, so some of you might already know this graphic. It kind of visualizes once again that I mentioned. Many countries have held elections or going to hold elections this year. 7 of the countries that are voting this year are on the right-hand side, and they are still, in terms of electorate, smaller than the entire electorate of India. Please allow me to first, before we kind of have a look at the results and talk about the implications and further thoughts on India-Europe relations, to set the scene and kind of outline the context of these elections. While there were 744 parties, of course, the focus has majorly been on the 2 major party alliances. One on the left-hand side, the National Democratic Alliance, NDA. This is the BJP-led alliance under Narendra Modi, and comprised of 38 parties. And on the right-hand side, you can see the opposition bloc, which is India National Development Inclusive Alliance, with 28 parties. So going through the headlines of Indian elections, sometimes one got the impression that there are 2 major prime ministerial candidates. So one, of course, Modi, who has now won the 3rd consecutive time, which has only been achieved by Jawaharlal Nehru in 1962. So this is again a historic moment. And on the other hand, Rahul Gandhi from the Indian Congress Party. However, the Indian National Development Inclusive Alliance has not formally declared Mr. Rahul Gandhi as the prime ministerial candidate. That's why I've also now included, just to indicate that it is more like a broader setup of parties, of national parties, regional parties, as well as profiles in this opposition bloc. Nevertheless, of course, Rahul Gandhi has been the most prominent political figure within that alliance, and also dominated the discussion and the kind of opposing dialogue with Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Here you can see select highlights, not all of them, of course. We have a limited time. Maybe in the interactive section, we can discuss some of that, just to give you an idea of what the major differences or the positioning was of those 2 major contesting party blocs. We have the National Democratic Alliance on the left-hand side under Modi. And here the key message really, or the key slogan, has been and still is Viksit Bharat 2047. This translates to loosely transforming India into a developed industrial nation by 2047. So this is a vision that has already been expressed prior to the election by Mr. Modi, and is now also guiding, or has been guiding, the Poll Manifesto, as well as the future course of action for the to-be-formed government. One very important pillar within that vision or strategy is making India the 3rd largest economy in the world, and also a global manufacturing hub. Just as a footnote here, Modi and his government from 2014 until today has achieved to bring India from the rank of 10th largest economy in the world to the 5th rank, and now has the aspiration to even surpass Germany. Another important point are a set of reforms that have been initiated under the I'm a bit unsure whether to call it previous government or still today's government, but in the past, basically, one important reform that has been discussed and would be implemented according to the manifesto is the Uniform Civil Code. Another one that also requires a constitutional amendment would be one nation, one election. So that's a major electoral reform. Maybe we can discuss that in detail later on. Another key highlight would be the implementation of the Women's Reservation Bill in legislative fora like the national parliament and the state parliaments, and also the implementation of the Citizens Amendment Act. Opposed to that, on the right-hand side, you can see some of the points that the Indian bloc has outlined. And here, first and foremost, particularly towards the end of the stretch of 6 weeks of campaigning, was the protection of the constitution. So the opposition, to a degree, quite successfully articulated that the BJP-led NDA intends to actually change the constitution. Of course, the constitution of India has experienced change, but so far it has always further empowered or evolved the rights of Indian citizens under the guiding framework of the constitution. Here, the opposition was basically claiming that the NDA would sharpen the societal divide and restrict rights and laws for certain groups of society and certain religions. So that was a major key point that was guiding the election campaign and also is now reflected in the Poll Manifesto. A second point that I'll come to later on as well was very much focusing on employment generation. So here the India bloc has promised in the manifesto to introduce a right, like actually a legal framework for young graduates or diploma holders to have access to paid apprenticeships to basically systematically link them up with the private sector, also to some degree to the public sector, and employment opportunities. Other topics, as you can see, revolve around caste-based issues and also the support of farmers, the agricultural sector, and low-income cohorts. So here, once again, as you can see, a visualized overview of the journey of Indian democracy in the past 6 weeks. This, once again, gives you a very concise overview, but we've discussed that. Maybe just to highlight here in the right bottom corner that the current timeline points towards the 8th of June, which is this Saturday, that Modi will be sworn in as the next Prime Minister. So he just recently handed over his official resignation to the President of India, which is a formal procedure and step to be done. And then he was requested by the President to continue with the government until the new government is being formed. Looking at the voter turnout. So here I've brought you a couple of figures because it's quite interesting. Even in Western media, these figures have been discussed quite intensely. As you can see in the center of the slide, that India achieved to get a voter turnout of 66.3%, which is slightly lower than in 2019 in the last elections. Nevertheless, it is still higher than the average turnout of the last, or the actual turnout of the last EU election, and as per the data from 2019, which was around 50.6%, and 66.8% in the elections of the United States of America. So this also, the ratio or the rate of 66.3% translates to 642 million voters that actually cast their vote, and within that there's a share of 48% women who did that. That's always also an interesting figure to look at, because also in absolute figures the number of female voters in India has increased slightly, around 7%, as opposed to the last election phase. And overall, these figures are 2.5 times the total amount of voters of the 27 EU nations, sorry. So prior to the election, many pre-polls have been conducted. This is one kind of glimpse into such surveys that was done. And as you can see, in unemployment, I've mentioned before that there has been quite a lot of economic growth in India. A steep rise, actually, also just reconfirmed with the latest GDP growth figures of 8.2%. Nevertheless, there is some gap when it comes to unemployment. That, of course, particularly concerned young voters or first-time voters, and that was also very well addressed by both major political alliances in the course of their election campaign. So that also reflects now in the statistics of poll statistics and post-electoral statistics, where this issue of unemployment is less urgently flagged than before, because both party blocs were able to meaningfully outline measures to tackle relevant steps towards closing that gap of unemployment. Right, so here now we already dive into the results. And before we do so and look at some pie charts and tables, I'd like to share with you what I have been, what I woke up to on the 5th in the morning. So this is just one example. There were many headlines, of course, all of the newspapers reported on it. So here the headline states, "Ab ki baar coalition sarkar," and please excuse the pronunciation. There are two things to decode this. One is the language. So this is translating to, this time it's a coalition government. And secondly, it also links up to the context in which this headline has been chosen, because the NDA's ambition, and Dr. Leb in his introduction mentioned that earlier, was quite high. So not only the BJP has set a very ambitious target of 370 out of 543 seats for themselves, but within the alliance, a target of 400 seats was desired. And that's why the slogan, I now can't see my notes on the slide, so I hope to be able to put it together. Ab ki baar Hazar, sorry, anyway, this time 400 will be crossed. So that was the slogan, which rhymes to this very headline that I was just pointing out. So the ambitions were high, the results were not as high as hoped. And of course, now the BJP is very much reliant on the two major parties within that gained the most votes after the BJP in the NDA to form a government. Looking at the division of seats, you can see in this chart that the magic number is 272. So India follows the first past the post system, which means that whichever party, or in that case alliance, achieves to secure more than the simple majority of the total number of seats is able to form a government. So BJP alone with 240 seats, basically they won seats in 240 constituency across India, is not sufficient. So the overall, of course, the magic number is here the most crucial one. And in this regard, one could also state, that's also what one can read today in the newspaper, it's not really a shift for, and not only in terms of internal distribution within NDA, where previously the BJP has been the dominant party, but also when it comes to the opposition, which is now significantly stronger, as you can also see in this chart that compares their result to 2019, where they gained in absolute terms 103 seats. Another point that I added this morning was some aspect from a post-poll survey where people have been asked whether they actually consider Rahul Gandhi as a potential prime minister versus Modi or others. And in a stretch of the last 1 decade, because of course the Modi government has been in power since 2014, Rahul Gandhi has increased in terms of sympathy points by the surveyed citizens of India, while the Modi factor, as we also call it, still persists. So his popularity also today is quite high, while it has slightly decreased. On this slide, you can see a more detailed breakup now of the political spectrum in the lower house, comprising of 543 seats. And the key message I'd like to make here is basically within the table on your right-hand side, where you can see that these two parties that are also highlighted in color, Telugu of Andhra Pradesh in the south, and also Janata Dal United from Bihar, they are the two strongest parties, 16 and 12 seats respectively, that elevates the overall result to the kind of result that is actually required to form a government. So these are the key partners now that Modi has very swiftly made a pact with, you can say, like reassured the alliance also post the election with them to be able to actually take the next step on Saturday, as I've mentioned in the beginning. This overview here gives you once again, from a bird's eye perspective, how India, in terms of its political landscape, looked like in 2019. The orange spots are the BJP NDA alliance. The respective numbers are there as well. And the blue part is the opposition, with including the Congress party. And now, clicking one slide further, you can see 2014. So this has changed now. There is more friction, or it's more diversely disseminated across India. So I go back again, 2019, 2024. And the question that comes to mind when looking at the overall map in India, whether there's actually this north-south divide that is also frequently being discussed and pointed towards. So these elections have actually showcased that, as you can see, of course, there is some trend that in the very southernmost tip, it's still very much blue. Nevertheless, the BJP vote share in Andhra Pradesh, which is in the south, as well as Telangana and Kerala, has increased. And at the same time, and that was a very surprising turn of event, the BJP has lost a lot of votes in the so-called Hindi belt, which is in the north, and that also comprises of India's largest state, which is Uttar Pradesh. And Uttar Pradesh is usually tagged as the Prime Minister's way to Delhi. So it's a very politically important state, looking also at the history of India and his political developments. And there the BJP actually did not get as many seats as desired, not even half of the seats actually, of the in total 80 odd seats. Yeah, then I'm slowly coming to an end already. Just a few more select insights in terms of other observations. Of course, when looking into the behavior of voters, it's always interesting to see what's the rural versus urban divide. So here, just very briefly, you can see that the BJP-led NDA has remained strong within the urban strata, and also lost a few seats in the rural areas, while the India bloc has gained seats there. So one explanation here is also that Rahul Gandhi's yatra journey from the south of India to the very north that he conducted over 300 odd days throughout India, more or less by foot, was a very effective tool to connect with people and to convince the Indian electorate of his dedication to become a leading figure in the political landscape. So that's just one explanation I'm citing, just to give you an idea. And in the Hindi heartland, as I have already outlined, there were some losses, while the alliance India has gained significantly. And when it comes to economic factors, then one result was from the post-election surveys or analysis that for people who felt that their economic situation had worsened in the period from 2019 till today, they were more likely to have voted for the opposition. And for people that actually did not feel that they had to undergo any adverse change to the economic situation, they were dividing their votes almost equally between the opposition and the ruling regime. Now, what are the implications? Again, these are just select points, and I think as we move forward, more points will be added or further specified. First and foremost, the formalities I have briefly touched upon. The current government has a kind of a timeline that's expiring latest by the 16th of June. Nevertheless, anyway, the oath taking is now scheduled to happen on the 8th of June already. So this will be ticked off already this week itself. And I mentioned before that Prime Minister and to-be Prime Minister Narendra Modi was also fairly quick in bringing the coalition of the BJP, the TDP and JDU together in unity and assuring that they will together form the government. Nevertheless, the position of the BJP is weakened, the opposition is significantly strengthened, and that can translate, of course, into a slowdown or even other challenges of actually implementing some of the reforms that have been also stated or listed in the manifesto. As I've mentioned, the electoral reform is one important one that might not go through because you need a 2/3 majority for that, and many more such reforms. In general, of course, it might have an impact on the speed of implementing policies, bills, and other missions and initiatives. The government under Modi has been very successful in implementing a wide range of missions and initiatives in the last 10 years to tackle economic and sustainable growth and social welfare of India. So the administration has been quite efficient in doing that. Now, of course, it's a different scenario, so it might be slower. Another point, linking again back to the election results, is that expectations of coalition partners have to be factored into the building of the new cabinet. So we might see that some key portfolios go to the coalition partners as opposed to the BJP to keep them committed to their alliance. Another evident point or interesting point that we are interested to see is whether the Hindutva narrative, so the ideology of the BJP, will continue in the same intensity as seen during the election. And last but not least, there might be more emphasis on grassroots initiatives as well as rural schemes, because that is also what the state parties bring to table, their expectations from their point of view, and also with a strong opposition. At a global level, the situation entails, first and foremost, continuity and stability. So there was a bit of a power tilt. There was not a shift, as I've stated. So that translates to kind of planning security, continuation of ongoing bilateral, multilateral, regional initiatives, and deepening of partnerships, formats, and so on. The way forward is now, as Narendra Modi has also stated, that this flagship vision of Viksit Bharat as developed India by 2047 remains to be the guiding star of the next not only 100 days, but overall transforming India's future into a developed country. And in his speech after addressing his BJP community at the headquarters, he also emphasized that they'll continue their path on green industrialization, which is a very key, a very good statement to pick up on when we now look at the India-EU relations. On the right-hand side, you can see the latest Instagram post as of today morning of the entire coalition. Okay, I'm sorry, I think I'm overstretching the time a bit, but this is almost the last slide, I think the second last. Now, already having set the scene now and understood some of the implications and results, how does that translate into the framework of EU and India? I'd like to highlight that I'm of course not speaking on behalf of the European Union or the European Commission or of the Indian government, but based on the available information and also what can be seen here in the ecosystem of Europe-India, is that the partnership between the European Union and India is very much holistically anchored in a wide range of topics. And within that very broad range of topics that are listed here, there are multiple tools, initiatives, and partnerships. It would take too much of time to actually mention all of them, that also demonstrate how you can say how well developed the partnership is already in terms of its actual depth and breadth, so in all dimensions. An important document here, or you can also say a framework for this partnership, is the roadmap to 2025. So therein you can read up on all the planned initiatives and the kind of joint agreement on how the roadmap of EU and India looks like in the next few years. It was brought about in 2020. So there's of course the assumption that in the next EU-India summit, which might happen in early 2025 or so, that one would take stock of what has been already successfully implemented or initiated and how to further evolve that. So with this new old government in place, of course, things and dialogues can be picked up where they've been left off. And that also promises a good, a solid starting point for the next phase of EU-India relations. Both nations are always or very often described as natural partners. It's a value-based partnership, but I believe in the last few years specifically, we have also seen that the value-based partnership has been enriched with a more and more interest-based approach, which is also reflected in India's foreign policy framework. Other highlights when it comes to the regional and international cooperation that are now to be taken forward and further broadened or deepened. One is, of course, the India-German government consultation happening this year in New Delhi. Then referring also to the G20 summit in 2023, very interesting and strategically decisive cooperations or initiatives have been brought to table here. India also demonstrated its strong voice in the global south and its ability to have a seat at the global high table. And one initiative that also concerns Europe is the IMEC, the India Middle East European Corridor. So that is, of course, something that aligns well with the EU Global Gateway Strategy. So we look forward to learn more about the future steps. And in terms of India's foreign policy of looking east and neighborhood first, which means that striking alliances and fostering ties with its neighboring countries. There's also the BIMSTEC, the acronym for Bay of Bengal Initiative for Multi-Sectoral Technical and Economic Cooperation. That is also, was in the recent past now kind of sealed or established, and we'll see the next steps here as well in the near future, the next summit in Thailand. So this is now from my side, hopefully brief enough overview and not too long, and I look forward to your comments, questions, and thank you very much for your attention.
Yeah, thank you very much, Judith. I think this presentation gave us a really good overview. And yeah, I would also like to encourage all participants to ask questions via the chat function. But to start with, so you already mentioned that the EU-Indian relations, are very important. That there also will be the EU-Indian summit, maybe at the beginning of the next year. And in 2022, the free trade agreement was also resumed. So do you think now under the new government, it is more likely to maybe reach an agreement? Also considering that maybe the economy and the foreign investors could profit, that maybe Modi will now put like the Hindu identity agenda and nationalism a bit less strong on his agenda, so that maybe the economy could open up a little bit more?
So first of all, in my opinion, I think the economy has, the Indian economy has, or other way around, let's start from there. In terms of the reforms and initiatives in the last 10 years, you can actually witness a very strategic endeavor to bring India to the attention of global investors and to make India more visible, not only from a geopolitical point of view, but also from an economic and business related point of view. And I think there is a fair amount of success in having done that. Of course, whatever can now be still leveraged, for example, the share of or the opportunities in the manufacturing sector, that is now still ahead of all of us, and maybe opportunities to tap into. The free trade agreement negotiations, of course, in this case, EU-India comprise of 3 major agreements. So it's a quite comprehensive set of points that these 2 governments or federations have to agree on. Therefore, it requires a lot of effort to do that. And I think I'm not in a position to judge whether and how the conclusion can be achieved. But I'm certain that both sides are very much interested and dedicated to make that happen, because of course, the benefits are obvious, and this would again be a very important milestone for EU-India relations that can help further increase the respective economic ties in the EU and in India, which are already progressing, but could be further accelerated, of course. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We have one question from Kevin Bayer. He said that so there is an internal rule, so-called no ticket after 75 from the PGP party. Modi is now already 73 years old, so we will soon reach the 75 years. And the question is, which role does Modi's age play for the future of the government and the party? And perhaps also what could come after Modi?
Yeah, so that's a very interesting question, I would say, especially when looking around the world, where the this aspect of age is sometimes discussed quite prominently. In the Indian election, it did not really play any major role. So there is across parties, if you look at the average age of the leading figures, it's rather high, of course, but India is no exception here in terms of the global average. And Modi's age, as far as I can tell, maybe someone would disagree, has never been any issue for the Indian electorate or society. He's established, he's positioning himself as an experienced leader. He's also been the chief minister of Gujarat for several years, and then emerged or elevated himself to this position. So I think this is kind of legacy that also positively affects the perception of his age, I would say. Potential successors, a question mark. I think these elections have shown that, as we say in German, the cards have been mixed again. Sorry for that bad translation, especially because in the media, the chief minister of Uttar Pradesh, Yogi Adityanath, has many a times, also in the last years, been sometimes referred to as a potential candidate to step into his shoes. Now the BJP, which is also Adityanath's party, has significantly lost voters' shares there. So we'll have to see what the future holds. Yeah.
Okay. We have now 2 more questions regarding the free trade negotiation in EU and India. One question is, so there was, the outcome in rural areas was less than expected. So might this election outcome influence that the negotiation on agriculture within the framework of the free trade agreement becomes more difficult? And the second question regarding the free trade agreement is what Germany could do to contribute the free trade agreement and to make a conclusion more likely.
Mm-hmm. So responding to the first question, looking at the voting pattern when it comes to NDA and particularly BJP, it's not a new trend that the share of rural voters is, comparatively speaking, when it comes to the Congress party as an example, lower, because especially in the middle class section and upper class, the BJP has had or has been having strong support that sometimes correlates with urban or semi-urban, not always, but in some cases. So I would not draw a direct line here in terms of losing losing more seats in the rural spectrum would dilute the focus on such topics. The agricultural sector is a significant pillar of India's employment market. It has already reduced, but it's still, of course, very much there. And under the mission that again stems from the last 10 years government self-reliant India, also the agriculture sector is concerned, and there have been many efforts and strategies to bring this sector to the next level and elevate that. So in terms of putting that into a bilateral perspective, I believe that can only be enriching rather than destructive. Very well, also, of course, agreeing to the fact that a certain amount of protection has to be ensured, because you can't compare the agriculture sector in India to the agriculture sector in the EU, and that's a major discrepancy that also reflects in the ongoing negotiation. Germany's role in that is I think evident also from its economic profile or positioning in this in the context of EU-India positions. Most EU companies are German companies in India. FDI figures are led by German companies, particularly, of course, in the traditional, or our German traditional sectors like automotive. So they would definitely pay, or they are playing a key role in advancing the negotiations and understanding bottlenecks and helping overcome them. So.
Okay, thank you. I think slowly we need to come to an end. Just one more, one last question from a participant. Mr. Hetz asked, how will the election influence India's approach towards China and the US, and perhaps also towards Russia?
Right. So as I've mentioned before, in terms of the result that we're looking at right now and the new constellation of the government that is expected, no major differences are anticipated in this moment when it comes to India's foreign relations. I think they'll steer clear in terms of the course that they have now set, that the kind of positioning that they have achieved globally and carved out for themselves. And in this regard, I don't see any major turnarounds or change of strategy here. And of course, the US is India's largest trading partner, followed by China, or actually, to be precise, it's now other way around, or fluctuating. So there are certain economic ties, of course, as well. So it's a holistic picture that one has to look at, not only in terms of regional security interests and geopolitical dimensions, but also economically. And I think this will be, of course, or continues to be a key priority of India to balance that. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. I think, we really gained a very good overview of the Indian elections, and we also saw that it was not like a major power shift, but still much different than expected. And I think it will be really interesting to see, how India will develop. And also, soon we have the European elections, so let's see what the outcome will be, and also how EU-Indian relations can be strengthened in the next months and years. Thank you very much, Judith. It was really, really interesting. And now I would kindly ask our participants to fill out a very quick survey. It only takes you 2 minutes. You can find the link at the chat. And we would really appreciate if you fill it out and let us know what we could improve or what you have liked. And thank you very much for your participation. And we hope to see you soon during another online session at those Global Perspectives.